For 20 years, a disabled CEO who never believed in love sat behind the walls of his billion-dollar mansion with a heart colder than stone. But everything changed the day a poor funny maid accidentally stole his heart with one unexpected act he never saw coming. His name was Damien Cross, a powerful billionaire, a feared CEO, a man whose smile had vanished for 2 decades. Employees trembled around him. Business rivals respected him. Women admired him from a distance. But nobody could get close enough to break through the invisible wall around his heart. Not after what happened 20 years ago. Not after the tragedy that left him disabled. Not after the painful secret that convinced him love was nothing more than a beautiful lie. Then came Olivia Reed. A poor maid with worn-out shoes, endless jokes, and a habit of turning disasters into laughter. She wasn't beautiful in the glamorous way billionaire CEOs usually noticed. She wasn't wealthy. She wasn't powerful. And she certainly wasn't looking for love. But from the moment she stepped into Damien's mansion, strange things began happening. The staff started smiling. The silent hallways grew louder. And the disabled CEO, who hadn't laughed in 20 years, suddenly found himself watching a maid he couldn't understand. Then one ordinary day, Olivia did something completely unexpected. Something so simple, so ordinary, yet so powerful that it shook a 20-year-old wound Damien had buried deep inside his heart. A wound nobody knew existed. A wound connected to a locked room. A forgotten promise. And a heartbreaking secret from the past. But why had the disabled CEO stopped believing in love for 20 years? What was hidden inside the forbidden room he never allowed anyone to enter? Why did one poor funny maid affect him when countless others couldn't? And what was the unexpected act that stole the heart of a man who swore he would never love again? The city skyline glowed beneath the morning sun, but inside Cross Global headquarters, warmth seemed forbidden. Employees lowered their voices whenever they approached the executive floor. Some unconsciously straightened their clothes before stepping out of the elevator. Others rehearsed their presentations one final time. Nobody wanted to disappoint Damien Cross. At 38, Damien wasn't just wealthy. He was one of the youngest, self-made billionaires in the country. His construction empire stretched across continents. Luxury hotels, skyscrapers, airports, and entire residential districts carried the Cross name. Financial magazines called him a genius. Business channels called him unstoppable. Yet none of those titles mattered when the office doors closed each evening. Because success had never filled the emptiness waiting for him at home. Inside his enormous office, Damien sat silently behind a black walnut desk worth more than most people's homes. His wheelchair faced the floor-to-ceiling glass wall overlooking the city. A television nearby announced another corporate victory. Cross Global has officially become the nation's largest construction company for the 5th consecutive year. The news anchor smiled brightly. Damien muted the television. His expression never changed. A soft knock interrupted the silence. His assistant Evelyn stepped inside, carrying a folder. "Sir, the board members want to schedule a celebration dinner." No. They were expecting that answer. Damien signed several documents without looking up. Evelyn hesitated. "Sir, today is also the anniversary." The pen stopped moving. For a moment, the room felt heavier. 20 years. Exactly 20 years. Damien's eyes drifted toward a small framed photograph, partially hidden behind several business awards. A teenage boy smiled beside a young girl holding a violin. Sophia Cross, his sister, the only person who had ever convinced him that life was meant to be enjoyed. A familiar ache tightened inside his chest. Without warning, fragments of memory flashed through his mind. A summer afternoon. Sophia laughing while arguing about music. A highway stretching endlessly ahead. A truck crossing into the wrong lane. A horn. Shattered glass. Screaming tires. Then darkness. Damien closed his eyes. Doctors had called him lucky. Lucky to survive. Lucky to keep his life. Lucky to regain partial independence despite losing the use of his legs. But every morning for 20 years, he had asked himself the same question. Why Sophia? Why not him? The guilt had followed him through every promotion, every achievement, and every $1 billion he earned. Across town, a very different morning was unfolding. Olivia Reed carefully folded her last clean shirt into a worn travel bag. The tiny apartment she shared with her grandfather barely had enough room for both of them. Peeling wallpaper covered the walls. The refrigerator hummed loudly in the corner. Bills sat stacked on the kitchen table. Yet somehow Olivia was smiling. Her grandfather watched her. You know, most people don't grin on the way to cleaning job. Olivia laughed. That's because most people haven't seen me dance while holding a mop. You call that dancing. I call it talent. Her grandfather chuckled. The sound filled the small apartment. For a brief moment, neither mentioned the overdue medical bills sitting on the table. Neither mentioned the fact that Olivia had taken 3 jobs during the past year to keep them afloat. And neither spoke about the silver music box sitting on the shelf. The old box had belonged to Olivia's late grandmother. Before passing away, she had always warned Olivia about one thing. Never lose hope, no matter how difficult life becomes. The memory stayed with Olivia now as she prepared for her new job. She had no idea she was about to walk into the home of one of the richest men in America. And she certainly had no idea that behind one locked door inside his mansion rested a secret connected to 20 years of pain. A secret that would soon connect their lives forever. The black iron gates of Cross Manor slowly opened, revealing a property so enormous that Olivia momentarily wondered if she had arrived at the wrong address. The mansion stood atop a gentle hill, overlooking acres of perfectly maintained gardens. Fountains sparkled beneath the afternoon sun. Luxury vehicles lined a circular driveway. The entire estate looked more like a private palace than a home. Olivia stared through the taxi window. Well, she muttered to herself, if I accidentally break something here, I'll probably owe money until I'm 90. The elderly driver laughed. You've got courage, young lady. No, Olivia replied, grabbing her bag. Just poor decision-making skills. The driver chuckled as she stepped out. Inside the mansion, employees moved with quiet precision. Everyone seemed disciplined, organized, careful, almost nervous. A middle-aged woman, wearing a professional uniform, approached. You're Olivia Reed. Depends, am I being hired or arrested? The woman blinked. For a moment, Olivia worried she had made a terrible first impression. Then the woman's lips twitched. Barely. I am Beatrice Hale, the house manager. Nice to meet you, Miss Hale. Beatrice nodded. Follow me. As they walked through endless hallways decorated with priceless artwork, Olivia noticed something unusual. Nobody smiled. Not the cooks. Not the gardeners. Not the security staff. The atmosphere felt strangely heavy. Almost as if laughter itself had been banned. Meanwhile, on the mansion's top floor, Damien Cross reviewed reports from his home office. The massive room overlooked the gardens below. Business documents filled one side of the desk. On the other side sat a small violin. The instrument was old, but carefully preserved. Nobody touched it. Not even Damien. For 20 years, it had remained exactly where Sophia left it. His gaze lingered on it for several seconds before he turned back to work. The sight of the violin always brought the same memory. Sophia practicing near a lake. Missing notes. Laughing at her mistakes. promising that one day she would perform in a grand concert hall. The promise had died with her, or so Damien believed. Downstairs, Beatrice continued Olivia's orientation. You will help with housekeeping, laundry, and guest preparation. Understood. There are strict rules. Olivia smiled. I figured there might be one or two. There are many. They stopped beside a grand staircase. For the first time, Beatrice's expression became serious. Most importantly, the entire east wing of the third floor is restricted. Olivia nodded. Private offices? No. Beatrice hesitated, then lowered her voice. A room. Just one room. The answer seemed odd. Olivia glanced upstairs. A room. Yes. What happens if someone enters it? Several nearby employees exchanged uncomfortable looks. One housekeeper nearly dropped a tray. The reaction caught Olivia's attention immediately. Beatrice spoke firmly. Nobody enters that room. Why? Because Mr. Cross said so. The answer wasn't satisfying. But something about the way everyone avoided eye contact made Olivia realize there was far more to the story. A mystery. A wound. A secret. And without knowing why, curiosity stirred inside her. Far above them, Damien wheeled toward the window. His gaze drifted across the grounds. Below, he noticed a young woman following Beatrice through the courtyard. She was carrying an old travel bag and talking with animated hand gestures. The new maid. For some reason, she appeared to be making Beatrice laugh. A rare sight. Damien frowned slightly. Most new employees spent their first day terrified. This one looked completely different. Almost impossible to intimidate. He looked away after only a moment. Yet he failed to notice something important. For the first time in years, he had watched a stranger for longer than necessary. And far below, Olivia unknowingly glanced toward the third-floor windows. Toward the floor where the forbidden room waited. Toward the secret that would eventually change both of their lives. Neither of them realized fate had already begun moving its pieces into place. Olivia's second day at Cross Manor began with a disaster. Unfortunately, disasters seemed to follow her wherever she went. She balanced a tray filled with freshly brewed coffee while hurrying down a hallway she still hadn't memorized. One wrong turn led her toward the private office wing. Another wrong turn brought her around a corner too quickly. And that was when she collided with someone. The tray tilted. Coffee flew through the air. The cup shattered against the marble floor. A dark stain spread across an expensive charcoal suit. The entire hallway fell silent. Olivia froze. Several employees gasped. One maid covered her mouth. A security guard looked as though he had just witnessed a crime. Slowly, Olivia lifted her eyes. The man before her sat in a wheelchair. Sharp jawline. Cold gray eyes. Immaculate appearance. Damien Cross. The owner of the mansion. The billionaire CEO himself. For 3 painfully long seconds, nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Olivia's stomach dropped. She had lasted less than 48 hours. Her new record. Mr. Cross, one employee began nervously. But Olivia spoke first. Oh no. Damien stared at the coffee soaking into his suit. Oh no, he repeated. Olivia swallowed. Then glanced at the stain. Well, on the bright side, your suit finally experienced some excitement today. The hallway went completely silent. Someone nearly dropped a stack of towels. A gardener standing nearby looked horrified. Nobody joked with Damien Cross. Nobody. Especially not after dumping hot coffee on him. Damien simply stared at her. The young woman expected shouting. Termination. Security escorting her out. Instead, Damien noticed something unusual. She genuinely looked worried about ruining his clothes. Not about losing her job. Not about upsetting a billionaire. Just about the accident itself. It reminded him of someone. A brief flash surfaced in his mind. Sophia, age 12, standing in the kitchen after accidentally breaking their mother's favorite vase. Instead of apologizing immediately, she had said, "Good news, it can only be broken once." Even their mother had struggled not to laugh. The memory appeared and disappeared so quickly that Damien barely recognized it. His expression hardened again. "Beatrice." The house manager immediately stepped forward. "Yes, sir. Have someone clean this." Then Damien wheeled away. Just like that. No yelling. No punishment. Nothing. The staff stood stunned. Olivia blinked. "Am I employed?" Beatrice looked equally surprised. "It appears so." As the employees slowly dispersed, whispers immediately followed. Nobody spills coffee on him. And survives. What was she thinking? Olivia overheard the comments. "I wasn't thinking." The honesty made several workers laugh despite themselves. Later that evening, Damien sat alone inside his office reviewing contracts. The mansion had grown quiet. Moonlight spilled across the polished floor. Yet his concentration kept slipping. Every few minutes, he found himself remembering the maid's ridiculous comment. "Your suit finally experienced some excitement today." A faint sound escaped him. Not quite a laugh. Not quite a smile. But close. Close enough to unsettle him. He turned toward the violin resting near the bookshelf. The same violin Sophia had once loved. For years, every memory of her had brought pain. But tonight, for the first time in a very long while, the memory carried something else. A trace of warmth. Downstairs, Olivia finished her duties before stepping outside for fresh air. As she crossed the courtyard, she noticed a light glowing from one third-floor window. The same wing Beatrice had warned her about. The restricted area. The forbidden room. For just a second, she thought she saw a shadow move inside. Then the curtain shifted closed. A strange feeling settled over her. Almost as though the room itself was waiting. Waiting for someone. Waiting for something. And neither Olivia nor Damien realized that the tiny crack formed by a spilled cup of coffee would eventually open a door that had remained closed for 20 years. Within a few weeks, something unusual began happening at Cross Manor. At first, nobody noticed. Then everybody did. The mansion was changing. Not dramatically. Not overnight. But little by little. The change had a name. Olivia Reed. For years, employees had worked quietly, completing their duties with military precision. Conversations were short. Laughter was rare. Most people arrived, worked, and left without forming real friendships. Then Olivia arrived. And somehow, she refused to let sadness stay where she could see it. One morning, she walked into the kitchen and found two cooks arguing over a ruined cake. The younger cook looked ready to cry. Olivia examined the disaster. The cake had collapsed in the middle. She tilted her head. "Honestly, I think it looks artistic." The younger cook blinked. "Artistic?" "Absolutely. Modern architecture. Mr. Cross owns a construction company. Tell everyone it's inspired by one of his buildings." The kitchen erupted with laughter. Even the older cook struggled to hide a smile. Later that day, gardeners were laughing outside. The next day, security guards were exchanging jokes. For the first time in years, warmth slowly returned to the mansion. Meanwhile, Damien noticed everything. He simply pretended not to. From the window of his office, he occasionally watched employees talking more freely. The atmosphere felt different. Lighter. A change that made no logical sense. One evening, while reviewing financial reports, he overheard laughter drifting up from the courtyard. His attention shifted toward the window. Below, Olivia stood surrounded by several employees. She appeared to be telling a story. Everyone was laughing. Even Beatrice Hale. Damien stared for a moment. Then another. Something about the scene felt unfamiliar. Because 20 years ago, before tragedy entered his life, laughter had once been common inside the Cross family. A flashback surfaced unexpectedly. Sophia running through the house. Their mother chasing after her. Their father pretending to be angry while secretly smiling. Back then, the mansion had felt alive. The memory vanished as quickly as it came. Damien looked away. But the feeling lingered. Far downstairs, Olivia remained unaware she was being watched. She was too busy helping one of the elderly gardeners repair a broken wheelbarrow. Growing up with very little had taught her practical skills. Her late grandfather had repaired everything instead of replacing it. Broken chairs, old fences, leaking sinks. Money had always been scarce, but love had never been. Those lessons still guided her. The deeper truth, however, was something Olivia rarely discussed. Years earlier, after her parents passed away, many people expected hardship to make her bitter. Instead, it had done the opposite. Watching loss up close had taught her that happiness was fragile, temporary, worth protecting whenever possible. That belief explained why she fought so hard to make others smile. Even strangers. Especially strangers. One rainy afternoon, Olivia was dusting near the third-floor staircase when she noticed something unusual. A small delivery box sat outside the restricted wing. Nobody touched it. Nobody approached it. The box remained there for hours. Curiosity tugged at her. Eventually, Beatrice appeared and picked it up herself. Olivia noticed the label. A music restoration company. The observation seemed insignificant. But it wasn't, because hidden inside the forbidden room was an old violin. The same violin Sophia Cross had cherished before the accident. The same violin Damien secretly paid to maintain every year. A tiny clue. A tiny thread. One that would matter later. As evening approached, Olivia carried fresh linens upstairs. Halfway through the corridor, she heard something. Music. Faint. Beautiful. Melancholy. The sound lasted only a few seconds before disappearing. Olivia stopped walking. The restricted wing stood ahead. Silent once more. Her heart quickened. Nobody had mentioned anyone living there. Nobody explained why music occasionally echoed from behind the locked door. And for reasons she couldn't explain, the mystery drew her in even more. Somewhere beyond that door lived the answer to 20 years of pain. And each passing day was bringing Olivia closer to discovering it. Closer than anyone realized, including Damon himself. Curiosity can be a dangerous thing, especially inside a mansion filled with secrets. For nearly a month, Olivia managed to respect Beatrice's warning about the restricted wing. She avoided asking questions, avoided wandering upstairs unnecessarily, avoided the locked door at the end of the corridor. But the mystery never stopped calling to her. The occasional sound of music. The monthly deliveries from restoration companies. The way employees instantly changed the subject whenever the room was mentioned. The clues were small. Yet together, they formed a puzzle that refused to leave her mind. Then one afternoon, fate intervened. Olivia had been dusting the third floor while most of the staff prepared for an important charity dinner scheduled that evening. The mansion bustled with activity. Florists arrived. Caterers hurried through hallways. Deliveries came and went. In the middle of the chaos, Olivia noticed something unusual. The forbidden room's door wasn't fully closed. It stood slightly open. Just an inch. Maybe less. She stopped walking. Her pulse quickened. The sensible part of her mind urged her to keep moving. But another part whispered a question. What could be so important that an entire mansion feared one room? After several seconds, curiosity won. Slowly, Olivia approached. The gap allowed her to glimpse the corner of a bookshelf. Nothing alarming. Nothing dangerous. Carefully, she pushed the door open. The sight inside stole her breath. The room wasn't an office. It wasn't storage. It wasn't abandoned. It looked exactly like a child's bedroom. Time had frozen there. A neatly made bed sat beside the window. Stuffed animals lined shelves. Framed drawings decorated the walls. A collection of music trophies occupied a glass cabinet. Everything looked untouched, preserved, protected, as though someone expected the owner to return at any moment. A strange sadness settled over Olivia. She stepped farther inside. Near the window stood a violin. Beautiful, polished, meticulously cared for. Beside it rested a photograph. A teenage Damien smiled beside a younger girl holding the same violin. Sophia. The name was engraved on one of the trophies. Sophia Cross. The realization sent chills through Olivia. This wasn't merely a room. It was a memorial. A shrine. A place built from grief. Suddenly, dozens of unanswered questions began connecting. The silence. The sadness. The forbidden rule. The mysterious music. Everything pointed toward a loss that had never healed. Then Olivia noticed something else. A stack of sealed envelopes arranged neatly inside a wooden box. Every envelope carried the same handwriting. And the same name. Sophia. The most recent envelope appeared new. Only a few weeks old. Her heart tightened. Someone was still writing to her. Every year. Even now. Before Olivia could process the discovery, a voice suddenly echoed from behind her. What are you doing? The words were quiet, but they carried enough force to freeze her in place. Slowly, Olivia turned. Damien sat in the doorway. His expression revealed nothing. Yet somehow that was worse. The room instantly felt colder. More fragile. As if she had accidentally stepped into the most painful part of his life. For several seconds, neither spoke. Finally, Olivia swallowed. I'm sorry. Damien's eyes moved across the room. Then back to her. You were told not to enter. Yes. And yet you entered. Yes. The honesty caught him slightly off guard. Most people would have invented excuses. Olivia simply looked guilty. Not frightened. Not defensive. Just guilty. Her gaze drifted toward the violin. Then toward the photograph. And suddenly, she understood something. This room wasn't protected because of anger. It was protected because of love. The kind of love that survives even after death. A dangerous realization. Because it made Damien seem human. Not cold. Not heartless. Just deeply wounded. Olivia lowered her voice. She must have been very special. The words slipped out before she could stop them. The atmosphere changed instantly. Damien's jaw tightened. A flicker of pain crossed his face. Gone almost immediately. But Olivia saw it. For the first time since meeting him, she saw the man behind the billionaire. The brother behind the CEO. The survivor behind the wheelchair. Without another word, Damien wheeled forward. His hand gently touched the violin. A simple gesture. Yet it carried 20 years of heartbreak. And in that moment, Olivia unknowingly crossed an invisible line. She had entered the one place nobody else was allowed to see. The one place Damien had hidden from the world. The one place where all the answers waited. And though neither of them realized it yet, this forbidden room would become the bridge connecting two lonely lives. One searching for peace. The other searching for purpose. And fate had just taken a major step toward bringing them together. The silence inside Sophia's room stretched for several long seconds. Olivia wanted to apologize again. She wanted to leave. Yet something told her that walking away now would be a mistake. Damien remained beside the violin. His fingers rested lightly on its polished surface. For a moment, he looked less like a billionaire CEO and more like a man carrying a weight nobody else could see. Finally, Olivia spoke softly. "I'm sorry for entering." Damien kept his eyes on the violin. "I should fire you." "Probably." That answer surprised him. His gaze shifted toward her. "You agree?" Olivia nodded. "I broke a rule." Damien stared for a moment. Then, unexpectedly, the corner of his mouth almost moved. Almost. Not quite. The brief reaction disappeared so quickly that Olivia wondered if she imagined it. Instead of ordering her out, Damien slowly wheeled deeper into the room. This was Sophia's room. His voice carried none of the authority employees usually heard. Only exhaustion. Olivia remained silent. Sometimes, silence invited truth more effectively than questions. Damien's eyes settled on the photograph near the window. Sophia was 12. The number seemed simple, yet it filled the room with sadness. Narrative memories stirred beneath the surface of his mind. A younger Sophia racing through the mansion hallways. Her violin case bouncing against her side. Her laughter echoing from room to room. Unlike Damien, she had never worried about money, status, or reputation. She measured life differently. By songs learned. By friends made. By moments shared. And somehow, despite being 6 years younger, she had always understood people better than he did. Olivia quietly studied the room. Every object told a story. Every shelf carried a memory. Nothing had been preserved out of obsession. Everything had been preserved out of love. A dangerous distinction. One that would matter later. Because grief built from love could heal. Grief built from guilt often could not. And Damien's greatest wound wasn't losing Sophia. It was believing he had caused her death. The thought remained hidden for now. But clues had already been planted. The anniversary. The nightmares. The self-punishment. The emotional prison he refused to leave. As Olivia glanced around the room, her attention returned to the wooden box on the desk. The stack of sealed envelopes remained exactly where she had seen them earlier. Damien noticed her gaze. For a brief second, something vulnerable crossed his face. Then he spoke. "I write to her." Olivia blinked. "What?" "The letters." His voice remained calm. "I write one every month." Her heart tightened. 20 years. 20 years, and he was still writing. Damien slowly opened the wooden box. Inside were hundreds of envelopes. Some slightly faded with age. Others newer. A lifetime of conversations. Conversations that would never receive replies. "I started after the accident." His eyes remained fixed on the letters. "At first I thought I'd stop eventually." Olivia swallowed. "But you didn't." "No." The single word carried decades of pain. A flashback surfaced. 18-year-old Damien lying in a hospital bed. Unable to move his legs. Asking where Sophia was. Watching doctors avoid eye contact. Hearing his parents cry outside his room. The memory remained vivid even after 20 years. Some wounds never truly faded. They simply learned how to hide. Olivia carefully stepped closer. Not too close. Just enough. "What do you write about?" Damien looked at her. For the first time, there was no wall between them. Only honesty. Everything. He glanced at the newest envelope. Business victories. A pause. Failures. Another pause. Birthdays. His voice lowered. And all the things she should have been here to see. The room felt heavier, yet strangely warmer, because secrets lose some of their power once they're shared. Outside the window, the evening sun painted the sky gold. Neither noticed how much time had passed. Neither noticed how naturally the conversation had begun flowing. Something subtle was happening. Something important. For 20 years, Damien had kept the deepest part of himself locked away. Yet here he was, talking, sharing, remembering. Not with a therapist, not with a friend, not with a board member, but with a poor maid who wasn't afraid to listen. Then Olivia noticed something else inside the box. One envelope looked different. Older. More worn. The edges were frayed from being opened repeatedly. Unlike the others, this one wasn't sealed. Damien immediately noticed where she was looking. A shadow crossed his expression. For the first time since entering the room, he looked uncomfortable. Almost nervous. The reaction lasted only a second. But Olivia caught it. Whatever was inside, that particular letter mattered. A lot. She wisely said nothing. Yet curiosity quietly planted itself in her mind. Because sometimes the smallest clue points toward the biggest truth. And hidden inside that worn envelope was a secret connected to the accident 20 years ago. A secret that neither Olivia nor Damien fully understood yet. But when the truth finally surfaced, it would change everything. A week passed after Olivia entered Sophia's room. Neither she nor Damien mentioned the incident again. At least not directly. Yet something had changed between them. The cold distance that once existed no longer felt quite as strong. They spoke occasionally now. Brief conversations. Small exchanges. Simple moments. To most people, those moments would have seemed insignificant. But for Damien Cross, a man who had spent 2 decades keeping the world at arm's length, they were monumental. One morning, Olivia found him in the library reviewing blueprints. "Good morning." Damien barely looked up. "Morning." Olivia placed a fresh cup of coffee beside him. "Careful, this one is intended for drinking, not wearing." For a second, silence filled the room. Then Damien's shoulders moved slightly. Not a laugh. But close. Very close. Olivia noticed. So did he. Neither commented on it. Meanwhile, another date quietly approached. A date Damien never discussed. A date every employee at Cross Manor knew by heart. Sophia's birthday. Every year the mansion became even quieter than usual. Staff members spoke softly. Meetings were rescheduled. Visitors were discouraged. And Damien disappeared almost entirely. The pattern had repeated itself for 20 years. This year appeared no different. 3 days before the birthday, Olivia accidentally overheard 2 employees talking. Poor man. He spends the whole day alone every year. Still writes those letters. Every month. The conversation lingered in Olivia's thoughts long after it ended. That evening, she sat alone in her room. Thinking. Remembering. Her own grandfather had once told her something after her parents died. Grief wasn't a wound that healed. It was a wound people learned to carry. The memory resurfaced now. And suddenly an idea formed. Simple. Risky. Unexpected. The kind of idea only Olivia would attempt. Over the next 2 days, she quietly spoke with employees throughout the mansion. The cooks. The gardeners. The drivers. The security team. Even Beatrice. Each conversation ended with the same request. Write down a memory of someone you've lost. Most people look surprised. Some became emotional. Yet every person agreed. Soon dozens of handwritten notes began filling a small wooden box. Memories of mothers, fathers, brothers, friends, people deeply loved and deeply missed. On the morning of Sophia's birthday, Olivia placed the box outside the forbidden room. No name, no explanation, only a handwritten card. The words were simple. The people we lose never truly leave us. They continue living in every life they touched. Then she walked away. Hours later, Damien emerged from his office carrying his monthly letter. The same ritual he had followed for 20 years. His eyes immediately landed on the wooden box. Confusion appeared first, then curiosity. Slowly he picked up the card. Read it once, then again. The hallway remained silent. Carefully, he opened the box. Inside waited dozens of folded notes. The first came from a gardener. He described lessons his late father taught him. The second came from a cook. She wrote about recipes passed down by her grandmother. The third came from a security guard, remembering his younger brother. One by one, Damien read them. Then another, and another. Each note carried grief, but also gratitude. Pain, but also love. Something inside him began shifting. For 20 years, he had viewed loss as something that only took. Yet these strangers viewed loss differently. They carried their loved ones forward, not backward. A memory surfaced. Sophia sitting on a swing, barely 12 years old, laughing as she said, "If I disappear first, don't become boring." At the time, he had rolled his eyes. Now the memory struck like lightning. Because for 20 years, he had done exactly that. He had stopped living, stopped laughing, stopped allowing himself happiness. As the realization settled, his vision blurred. A tear slid down his cheek. Then another. For the first time since Sophia's funeral, Damien cried openly. Not from guilt, not from self-hatred, but from relief. Relief that he no longer felt completely alone. Across the hallway, Olivia quietly watched from a distance. She never approached, never interrupted. She simply allowed the moment to belong to him. Yet Damien knew exactly who had done this. Nobody else would have thought of it. Nobody else would have understood. And as he stared at the memory box, another realization formed. The poor maid who constantly made people smile had somehow reached a place inside him no one had touched in 20 years. A place even he had forgotten existed. And though neither of them recognized it yet, that unexpected act had become the first true step toward love. Not romance. Not yet. But something equally important. Healing. The foundation upon which every great love story is built. The days following Sophia's birthday felt different. Not only for Damien. For the entire mansion. Something invisible had shifted. The walls no longer felt quite as heavy. The silence no longer felt quite as lonely. And for the first time in 20 years, Damien found himself looking forward to seeing someone. Olivia. At first, he didn't understand why. She wasn't a business partner. She wasn't a lifelong friend. She wasn't even someone from his world. She was simply a maid. A poor young woman who somehow walked through life carrying sunshine where everyone else carried umbrellas. One morning, Damien was reviewing contracts in the library when Olivia entered carrying breakfast. She placed the tray on the table. "Good morning, Mr. Cross." "Morning." She examined his serious expression, then looked at the mountain of paperwork, then back at him. "I've been wondering something." Damien raised an eyebrow. "What?" "Do billionaires receive special training on how to look miserable while being rich?" For 2 seconds, Damien simply stared. Then something unexpected happened. A laugh escaped him. A real laugh. Short, brief, but unmistakable. Olivia nearly dropped the coffee pot. "There it is." Damien frowned. "There what is?" The laugh. I don't laugh. You literally just did. No, I didn't. You absolutely did. The conversation continued for several minutes. And for the first time in years, Damien noticed something strange. When Olivia was around, the constant pressure inside his chest seemed lighter. The guilt remained. The pain remained. But somehow they became easier to carry. As days passed, their conversations became routine. Sometimes they spoke while walking through the gardens. Sometimes inside the library. Sometimes over lunch. Not formal conversations. Real ones. The kind people have when they genuinely enjoy each other's company. One afternoon, Olivia found Damien staring out a window. What are you thinking about? Nothing. That's impossible. Why? Because every time people say they're thinking about nothing, they're usually thinking about something depressing. A reluctant smile touched his face. You always talk this much. Only when I'm awake. For reasons he couldn't explain, Damien found himself telling her things he never discussed with anyone. Stories about building his company. Funny childhood memories involving Sophia. Mistakes he made early in business. Dreams he once abandoned. And Olivia listened. Not because he was wealthy. Not because he was famous. But because she genuinely cared. That realization slowly dismantled walls Damien had spent decades building. Meanwhile, Olivia noticed things nobody else seemed to notice. The way Damien always avoided conversations about the accident. The way guilt appeared in his eyes whenever Sophia's name surfaced. The way he blamed himself without actually saying the words. The clues were everywhere. And then one afternoon, she discovered something unexpected. While helping organize old storage records requested by Beatrice, Olivia came across several boxes scheduled for disposal. Most contained outdated paperwork, financial statements, maintenance reports, property documents. Nothing interesting. Then a thin folder slipped from one box. The label immediately caught her attention. Traffic accident investigation. Her heartbeat quickened. The date matched the year of Sophia's death. Olivia hesitated. She knew she shouldn't look. But curiosity won. Again. Carefully opening the folder, she found copies of newspaper clippings and investigation summaries. Her eyes moved across the pages. Then stopped. A single sentence stood out. The truck driver involved in the collision had previously been cited for reckless driving violations. Olivia frowned. That wasn't what surprised her. What surprised her was another detail. A witness statement. Partially faded. Partially damaged. Yet still readable. The witness claimed the truck had crossed into Damien's lane seconds before the collision. Olivia stared at the sentence. Then read it again. Her pulse accelerated. Because for months she had assumed Damien blamed himself because he caused the accident. Everyone seemed to believe that, including Damien. But what if he hadn't? What if the story was incomplete? What if the guilt consuming him for 20 years was built on a misunderstanding? The possibility seemed impossible. Yet the document existed. And suddenly, dozens of questions flooded her mind. Before she could investigate further, footsteps echoed nearby. Olivia quickly closed the folder. But the discovery remained. A tiny clue. A tiny crack in a 20-year-old belief. And somewhere upstairs, Damien sat unaware that the foundation of his guilt had just begun to crumble. Because hidden within old records, forgotten witnesses, and buried truths was an answer neither of them expected. An answer powerful enough to change both of their lives forever. The discovery inside the old accident file refused to leave Olivia's mind. For days, she replayed the faded witness statement over and over. The truck crossed into their lane. The words seemed simple, yet they threatened to destroy a belief Damien had carried for 20 years. a belief that had shaped his entire life. If the statement was true, then perhaps Damien had spent 2 decades punishing himself for something that was never his fault. But proving that would not be easy. The accident happened 20 years ago. Witnesses moved away. Records disappeared. Memories faded. Still, Olivia couldn't let it go. Not after seeing the pain Damien carried every day. Not after watching him slowly learn how to smile again. Not after realizing how much he mattered to her. Because somewhere along the way, her concern for him had become something deeper. Something more dangerous. Something she wasn't ready to name. One afternoon, Olivia sat in the mansion archives pretending to organize inventory records while secretly examining old newspaper articles. Several reports repeated the same basic facts. Fatal collision. Teen driver survives. Younger sister dies. No criminal charges filed. But one article contained a detail missing from the others. The truck driver had been hospitalized for weeks after the crash. His name was Raymond Holt. Olivia quickly wrote it down. The clue felt important. Very important. Meanwhile, upstairs, Damien faced a different battle. One he was beginning to lose. He sat in his office staring at a contract. The numbers blurred together. His attention drifted toward the window. Toward the gardens. Toward Olivia. She was helping one of the gardeners replant flowers. As usual, she appeared to be talking nonstop. The elderly gardener laughed so hard, he nearly dropped his shovel. Damien found himself smiling. Then he caught himself. The realization struck unexpectedly. He looked forward to seeing her. He listened for her voice. He noticed when she wasn't around. And worst of all, he missed her when she left the room. The truth became impossible to ignore. He was falling in love. The realization terrified him. Because love had cost him everything once before. A painful flashback surfaced. 18-year-old Damien sitting beside Sophia in the car. Sophia laughing about some joke he could no longer remember. Then the crash. The darkness. The loss. For 20 years, he had convinced himself that caring deeply for people only led to suffering. Now another person had slipped past his defenses. Another person had become important. And the possibility of losing Olivia frightened him more than he wanted to admit. That evening, Damien found her feeding scraps to a stray cat near the garden fountain. The cat appeared extremely comfortable. "You're not supposed to feed stray animals," Damien said. Olivia looked up. "He told me he's not a stray." Damien raised an eyebrow. "He told you?" "Yes." "And what exactly did he say?" "He said he owns this fountain and allows us to use it." To Damien's surprise, laughter escaped him. A genuine laugh. The sound startled both of them. For a brief moment, neither spoke. Then Olivia smiled. A warm smile. The kind that reached her eyes. Something shifted inside Damien. Dangerously. Beautifully. And for the first time in 20 years, he found himself imagining a future. Not a business goal. Not another billion-dollar project. A real future. One that included someone else. But fate wasn't finished testing them. The following morning, Olivia finally located another piece of evidence. Buried inside a digitized newspaper archive was an interview with a retired highway patrol officer. The article referenced previously overlooked findings from the original investigation. Her heart pounded as she read. Toxicology reports had revealed that Raymond Holt, the truck driver, had alcohol in his system before the crash. Olivia stared at the screen. Then read the sentence again. And again. The room seemed to spin. Because if the truck driver had been intoxicated, if witnesses saw him cross into Damien's lane, then the entire foundation of Damien's guilt was wrong. Completely wrong. For 20 years, he had blamed himself. For 20 years, he had punished himself. For 20 years, he had refused happiness. All because he believed he had failed Sophia. Tears filled Olivia's eyes. Not because of the discovery itself, but because she suddenly understood how much life Damien had lost. How many birthdays, how many friendships, how many opportunities for happiness, all sacrificed to a lie. Yet one question remained unanswered. Why had nobody ever told him? Why had this truth never reached him? And hidden behind that question was an even bigger mystery. A mystery that would soon lead Olivia to the final missing piece of the puzzle. The piece capable of setting Damien free. Or breaking his heart all over again. The answer arrived where Olivia least expected it. Inside one of Damien's old storage rooms. 2 days after discovering the toxicology report, she continued searching through archived records, determined to uncover the missing piece. Something still didn't make sense. If evidence existed proving the accident wasn't Damien's fault, why had he spent 20 years blaming himself? Why had nobody corrected him? Why had the guilt survived for so long? The answer finally appeared inside a dusty legal file. A file overlooked for decades. Olivia carefully opened it. Her eyes moved across page after page. Then she froze. A letter. Addressed to Damien. Written shortly after the accident. The letter contained updated findings from investigators. Witness statements. The toxicology report. Evidence showing the truck driver caused the collision. Most importantly, the letter recommended grief counseling because survivors often blamed themselves even when evidence proved otherwise. The envelope had never been opened. Never delivered. Never read. Olivia stared at it in disbelief. Someone had filed it away by mistake during the chaos following the tragedy. One administrative error. One forgotten envelope. And a 20-year misunderstanding was born. Tears filled her eyes. Because she now understood the terrible truth. Damien's prison had never been built from facts. It had been built from silence. That evening, she requested to speak with him. They met in Sophia's room. The place where everything began. The setting sun painted the room in soft golden light. The violin rested beside the window. The letters sat neatly inside their wooden box. Damien immediately sensed something was different. What's wrong? Olivia sat across from him. For the first time since arriving at Cross Manor, she looked nervous. Very nervous. There's something you need to see. She handed him the file. Damien frowned. What is this? Please read it. The room became silent. Minutes passed. One page. Then another. Then another. Slowly, the color drained from Damien's face. His hands trembled. His breathing changed. His eyes reached the unopened letter. Carefully, he removed it. Opened it. Read every word. Then read it again. The silence became unbearable. Finally, he whispered. No. The words sounded broken. Almost childlike. No. His gaze lifted toward Olivia. For 20 years, he had carried one unbearable truth. Or what he believed was the truth. Now that truth was collapsing before his eyes. The truck crossed into my lane. Olivia nodded. Yes. The driver was intoxicated. Yes. I didn't. His voice cracked. I didn't cause it. The sentence hung in the air. 20 years of guilt. 20 years of self-hatred. 20 years of punishment. Gone. Not instantly. Not completely. But the foundation had shattered. And without that foundation, the prison could no longer stand. Tears filled Damien's eyes. For the first time since Sophia died, he allowed himself to remember her without immediately blaming himself. A memory surfaced. Sophia laughing in the passenger seat. Sophia teasing him. Sophia talking about her dream of performing on stage someday. For the first time, the memory brought love before pain. Not guilt before pain. Love. And suddenly, he understood something. Sophia would never have wanted this life for him. She would never have wanted him trapped in grief forever. She would have wanted him to live. To laugh. To love. His eyes moved toward Olivia. The woman who refused to give up on him. The woman who brought laughter back into his mansion. The woman who found the truth when nobody else could. The woman he loved. The realization felt crystal clear now. Not frightening. Not confusing. Certain. Damien slowly wheeled closer. Why did you do all this? Olivia's eyes softened. Because you deserve the truth. No. His voice lowered. Why did you keep fighting for me? Olivia opened her mouth. Then stopped. Because she finally knew the answer too. I couldn't stand seeing someone I care about suffer. The words escaped before she could stop them. Neither looked away. Neither needed to. For several seconds, only silence spoke. Then Damien smiled. A genuine smile. The kind Sophia would have recognized instantly. The kind nobody at Cross Manor had seen in 20 years. You saved me. Tears slipped down Olivia's cheeks. She shook her head. No. Damien reached for her hand. This time, he didn't let go. Yes. His voice became stronger. You gave me my life back. Then, with every ounce of honesty he possessed, he said the words his heart had been carrying for weeks. I love you, Olivia. The room blurred through her tears. Because she loved him too. Not the billionaire. Not the CEO. Not the famous man the world admired. Damien. Simply Damien. The man who wrote letters to his sister. The man who carried too much pain. The man whose heart remained kind despite everything he endured. I love you too. The confession felt like sunrise after a very long night. 1 year later, Cross Manor looked completely different. Children laughed in the gardens. Employees smiled freely. Music filled the hallways again. Sophia's room remained preserved, but no longer as a shrine to grief. Instead, it became part of the Sophia Cross Foundation, which provided music scholarships for underprivileged children. The dream Sophia never had the chance to fulfill now lived through thousands of others. And on a beautiful spring afternoon, friends, employees, and family gathered beneath white flowers overlooking the estate gardens. Olivia walked toward Damien. The man who once believed his life ended 20 years ago. The man who once believed he didn't deserve happiness. The man who once believed love was impossible. As she reached him, Damien glanced toward the sky. A gentle breeze moved through the trees. For a brief moment, he remembered Sophia's voice. If I disappear first, don't become boring. A laugh escaped him. A real one. The same laugh Olivia fought so hard to bring back. Then he looked at the woman who had changed everything. The poor maid who entered his mansion. The woman who healed his heart. The woman who became his future. And as they exchanged vows surrounded by love, laughter, and hope, Damien finally understood what Sophia would have wanted him to know all along. Surviving wasn't enough. Living mattered too. And after 20 years of darkness, he was finally ready to live.